Hey folks, welcome back to the show. Today's solo episode is a little bit different, I think. This episode is really directed at, well, it's directed at everybody, but it's really directed also, we've picked up a lot of new followers over the last little while, and some of you might be feeling like this world is a little bit weird and scary and intimidating. And I wanted to record an episode about, you don't have to be a biohacker too, right? You don't have to be a biohacker to care about your health today and your longevity. And so I want to pack this episode with a bunch of different tips of things that you can do without going out to buy scary equipment or, really weird stuff like for example, my Katsu bands. I show up at the gym with my Katsu bands on my legs and everybody's like, oh, what are those things? Why is there lights on your legs? And so then I go and explain, and it's great and it's really awesome and people are really interested. And I love my Katsu bands, but at the end of the day, not everybody wants Katsu bands, or maybe you don't have the budget for them right now. So I want to talk about some of the things that you can do that, first of all, like I said, you don't need to be a biohacker to be doing these things. All you need to be is a person who's really interested in living their best life, in being as healthy as possible, in feeling good today, and basically investing in your health account for the future, so that every passing decade you stay healthy, you stay strong, keep your ability to function and to enjoy your life and to be productive. And you know what? Maybe start a second career or a third career, or maybe your thing is going to be philanthropy or educating other people. One of the key things, the number one thing we want to do for longevity is keep our purpose, right? So always having a purpose, always having things to do, not being over busy, but having purpose, feeling like you're contributing. So I can't tell you what that is. For me right now, look, I love what I do. I have zero interest in retiring, none. I have lots of people around me who are getting close to that age where they're thinking of retiring. And I kind of, it's a bit baffling to me, this whole retirement thing. But then if I think about it, not everybody is lucky enough to love what they do to the degree that I do. So no judging. If you're looking forward to retirement, then what I hope for you is that you use that time to now do something that you've always wanted to do, or to learn something you've always wanted to learn, because it's that engagement. That's the stuff that keeps us going, keeps us healthy, keeps us happy, and keeps us young. The second thing is community. Building community around yourself. And this can be really easy for some people. There are certain people that have a million friends, or they even just have a few close friends, but having people around you that you relate to, that support you, that you can support, that community is one of the commonalities that is found in centenarians around the world. These are not people typically living alone on a mountaintop. I mean, those might exist, but we don't know who they are. But really, typically what we find in centenarians and long-lived people, even octogenarians, people well into their 90s, is that community is a massive piece of the puzzle for them. So building that community for yourself. And you know what, guys, if you don't have that community now, it doesn't mean you can't build it. Going back to point number one, where you're tapping into a new hobby or a new interest, or going back to school, you will meet new people. Like I myself am amazed over the last 4 or 5 years that I've been hosting this podcast and I've been going out to conferences and meeting new people. I have a whole new community of people in addition to my friends that I'm now deeply connected with because we share common interests. So none of these people were in my world before. And we do have the ability, fortunately for us, to continue to build community well for as long as we're drawing breath, right? So building community and having purpose. And I am going to get into some hardcore health stuff. So stay with me. If you're rolling your eyes here, trust me, there's going to be some good little nuggets in here, even for those of you who may already be practicing this. Number 3, gratitude. Practicing gratitude, or as my good friend Ben Azadi likes to say, vitamin G. Having your vitamin G every day. Vitamin G has been shown to have stupendous physiological health benefits, help to lower blood pressure, lower anxiety and stress. Like, it's nutty, the health benefits of truly experiencing and practicing gratitude every single day. And you know what? At the beginning, it might be a muscle that you're not used to using. And so it may not come naturally to you. But if you can spend 2 seconds every day being grateful, when you're walking outside saying, wow, I'm so grateful to be outside right now. Or when you're sitting down to a meal, experiencing gratitude for the food on the plate, the people that brought you the food. For some people, that takes the form of saying grace. For other people, it's a moment of breath work, of just breathing and coming into the present moment so that they can enjoy their food. For other people, it could just be a very private moment. Whatever that looks like for you, taking that little pause right before you start eating, feeling gratitude, amazing. At the end of every day, what are you grateful for today? On the worst possible day, there's almost always something to feel grateful for. And I'm sure there'll be someone in the comments somewhere who has had such a horrific day that they have nothing to be grateful for, and they're going to tell me that. Obviously, there's outliers, but 99% of the time, on most days, we have something we can feel grateful for. So gratitude at the end of every day, it's a great way to fall asleep. And at the beginning of every day, if you can start your day just being grateful for whatever, grateful for the fact that it's sunny out, grateful for the fact that it's raining and the plants are getting water and you don't have to water them, whatever. That vitamin G can lead to then producing more vitamin J. That's my invention, which is joy, right? So when we're grateful, it's easier for us to feel joyful. Okay, so those are 3 really soft hitting things, right? You're like, yeah, I definitely don't need to be a biohacker to have purpose, to build community, and to experience gratitude and joy. Definitely don't need to be a biohacker for that. And sometimes I think that in the biohacking community, we even forget that stuff, right? We forget the gratitude piece. We're so busy biohacking and doing all the things that sometimes we just get too busy. So what else? What are some of the other things that are maybe a little bit more sciencey and directly health driven that we can practice for a longer life that you don't have to be a biohacker for, right? But you don't need to be a biohacker, for example, to get regular labs done. That's a good one, right? And then by this, I mean blood work. Getting regular blood work done once every, let's say, if you want to, really dig into stuff, I would say biohackers typically will go every 6 months and get their labs done. Some people as often as every 3 months. But for the rest of you, every 5 years or 2 years, or when you happen to get sick, is not enough for blood work. Because then what you're doing is you're just waiting for something to go wrong to do your blood work. When you do regular blood work, you can watch trends. You can see if, for example, your blood sugar, your HbA1c, or your fasting blood sugar, your fasting insulin, if those numbers are trending in the wrong direction, you have every opportunity in the world to move them back, to take the steps required to improve them. And that could be exercise, it could be diet, it could be managing your stress. You don't need to be a biohacker to do this. You just need to be someone who owns their health, someone who's ready to take charge of their health and say, you know what? I'm not going to wait for my doctor to tell me I'm a diabetic or I'm pre-diabetic. I'm going to get a handle on this right now. All right. So regular labs, regular blood work is a really, really important step. And the good news is that there are an increasing number of services that are available to us where we can order blood work ourselves and do those labs in our own home. And there are I've talked about Inside Tracker this year. They will even send a phlebotomist to your house to do a blood draw. I mean, yes, you have to pay for it, but imagine that you don't have to beg anybody for the deep metrics that you're looking for. You're just going online, you're ordering your blood work. You either go to a lab or you have a phlebotomist come to your house. You get your blood work, and the beauty of it, all of these services, they will give you feedback. They will give you information about what's going well, what you might want to improve on, and some of the steps you can take to improve on it. You don't need to be a biohacker to do that. Really, you don't. Now, we all know the biohacking community is pretty obsessed with measurement, right? So that every 3 months, every 6 months blood work is part of that. And once again, I would say every 6 months is great if you're willing to do it, but at least once a year is fantastic. Other things that we love to measure as biohackers is our sleep and our recovery. I'm wearing 2 different rings here, believe it or not. One of them is an Oura ring, and the other one is a different ring that I'm testing out for another company right now. And I don't think you need to be a biohacker to own one of these rings, but I could be wrong. You may disagree with me. If you don't want to wear a ring to measure your sleep, your stress, and your recovery, here's an idea. Just check in with yourself in the morning. If you, after getting a reasonable amount of sleep, and by that I mean somewhere between 6.5 to 7.5 hours of sleep, if you wake up in the morning feeling exhausted, then you know you're not recovering well. And at the end of the day, I mean, you don't need to know the exact metrics around that. You just need to check in with yourself. And the other thing you need to do, because so many people I see, they just do it, right? Every morning they get up, they're exhausted, they're dragging themselves through the morning, they're pounding the caffeine to try and push through whatever it is they're pushing through, and they accept this as their life. You don't need to be a biohacker not to accept feeling crummy. You don't need to be a biohacker not to believe that it's not okay to feel exhausted when you wake up every morning, to feel bloated, to feel gassy, to feel pain. You don't need to be a biohacker not to acknowledge, not to accept these things for yourself. So if you wake up every morning and you feel like you never got to sleep, clearly there's an issue. If you sleep with a partner, ask them, am I snoring at night? Am I keeping you up? You probably already know this if you do, because you probably get a few elbows and a few pushes and nudges and kicks. If you happen to be a snoring person, you're not sleeping properly. You're not getting quality sleep. And you don't need to be a biohacker to know and to take steps to fix that. Why? Because if you don't, your blood pressure is going to go up. Your cravings for carbs is going to go up. Things in your world are going to start moving towards these chronic disease models that we see developing in people. These are preventable things, but they're only preventable if you take the steps. And so know that poor quality sleep night after night after night can ultimately lead you down a path of metabolic imbalance. Sorry about that. My brain just went offline for a second. Can lead you to a place of metabolic imbalance. Ultimately, that metabolic syndrome where we have high blood pressure, we have blood sugar that's too high, we have insulin resistance, we have all of this. We kind of have this whole spectrum of disorders or imbalances, if you will, that lead us to a bad place. If we know that if we keep waking up exhausted every morning and going to bed earlier doesn't help, finishing eating 3 hours before bed doesn't help. Again, something you don't need to be a biohacker to be doing. Just don't eat close to bedtime. It's going to improve your sleep right off the bat. If all of those things don't improve your sleep, then the next thing you can do is check yourself in for a sleep study. If you go for a sleep study, they will measure your sleep for one night and come back to you with a full report and tell you if you have some kind of respiratory obstruction. Once you can fix that, guess what, guys? You get to go to bed at night and wake up in the morning feeling refreshed. It's not a biohacking thing. It's not scary. As a matter of fact, it's something to aspire to, right? So you should be feeling refreshed every morning when you wake up. Doesn't take a biohacker to know that. And I would invite you to take action. Even people who live with biohackers don't always take our advice. I've been after my husband to go get a sleep study forever. He's going to do it and he needs it and we're going to fix it. And maybe he's not going to need, sorry, Mitch, so much coffee every morning to get himself going. And he admits this himself. Anyway, he knows this. So I'm not telling too many tales out of school. Okay, so what are other things you do not need to be a biohacker to do? Well, this one is kind of on the line, but I'm going to say sometimes what you don't do is more important than what you do. And when it comes to food, sometimes not eating for a period of time can be more important than almost anything else. And I am talking about fasting or intermittent fasting. Now, there's a million different ways to fast, folks. If you're a person who tends to eat from the moment they wake up until very close to when they go to bed, you have a little bit of work to do. So I would extend another invitation to you. Consider stopping eating food, let's say around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And then consider not having another bite of food, nothing but water, until 8 o'clock the next morning. Now, those of you who are on a 4-hour feeding window, you're rolling your eyes going, dude, this is ridiculous. But I'm telling you now that there are so many people around us who just haven't been able to do any of this stuff yet. Even just taking 12 hours off from eating will make a huge difference for you. Eventually, you can start to drive a wedge in there. And I would say before you start eating later in the morning, try stopping eating earlier in the evening. Try to stop eating at 7 o'clock at night and keep going till 8 o'clock the next morning. Try stopping eating at 6 o'clock at night and keep going till 8 o'clock in the morning. Look at that. That's 14 hours. A 14-hour fast is nothing to sneeze at. It's actually a great thing, especially for people who typically have gone 8 hours without eating, or people who wake up in the night and go have a snack. You don't want to do that. If you're waking up in the night and you need to have a snack because you're starving, you have a blood sugar issue. And you need to work with a coach or someone who's going to help you to figure out what's going on for you and how you can stop doing that. Okay? Because that is not healthy for you under any circumstances. So getting to the point where you can go 12 to 14 hours without any food is a beautiful thing. If you're a woman, we know that we do better if we eat protein within an hour of waking every morning. We're just going to have a better day. We're going to have better control over our intake for the rest of the day. We will do better if we want to do an intermittent fast, like a 16 or 18 hour. We're going to do better if we stop eating earlier in the day and wake up in the morning the next morning and have food and have good protein. Okay. Guys, you have a bit more flexibility here. You can do your intermittent fasting by skipping breakfast and delaying your first meal till 11 or 12 o'clock, like around noontime or 1 or 2, whatever the case may be. This is a muscle that you will build. But one thing I want to caution you all against is getting into the habit and continuing to do it even when it's not serving you. I have seen intermittent fasting or even one 24-hour fast a week, stopping eating, let's say on Sunday night at dinner and then not eating again until the next day at dinner time. I've seen that have transformative impact on people's blood work, going back to measuring blood, right? I had a client once who just started doing that one thing and his cholesterol normalized, his blood sugar got better, he lost weight, he felt better. It was phenomenal. It's not going to be for everybody. You need to be in a place where your blood sugar is balanced enough that you're not going to want to hurt people who are around you while you're not eating or get dizzy or sick or whatever the case may be. So whether you're a biohacker or not, you need to be able to go 12 to maybe 14 hours without having any food, just maybe having some water, maybe having a tea, right? So you don't need to be a biohacker for that. And that already is going to set you up for success in many other ways as you amplify and build on these basics. All right. Exercise, VO2 max. None of us do it. Well, most of us don't do it and enough. I've started to do it in the last couple of years, but working on even 2 minutes a day, ideally, but 1 to 2 minutes of getting breathless every day, whether it's standing and doing jumping jacks or doing high knees. Those things for longevity are unbelievable. I mean, and you don't need to be a biohacker to do this. You don't need to be a biohacker to do jumping jacks for a minute. I mean, maybe in the middle of the office you do, but you could go to a private place and do them, or high knees. And if you can't do a minute or 2 minutes, start with 15 seconds. You will notice if you keep up with this, it'll take no time. Within a couple of weeks, you'll be up to a minute. A couple of weeks after that, you'll be up to 2 minutes. It doesn't take time, and it doesn't take a biohacker. Okay. And we can call these exercise snacks. Now, exercise snacks, we're getting sort of into biohacking territory, because when we talk about exercise snacks, what we're talking about is interrupting our day, let's say every 2 hours, and doing something. We might do 20 squats. We might do 20 jumping jacks. We might do what else might we do? We might do all kinds of things, right? We might do jumping jacks. We might do squats. We might do high knees. We might do some push-ups. If you can't do push-ups on the floor, you could do push-ups on the wall. I mean, for those of you who are not biohackers and listening to this, you're saying, no, that's like a biohacking thing. So maybe it is, but I'm just opening the door and letting you take a little peek in our world. It doesn't take much. And again, if you do this consistently, let's say even 5 days a week, the 5 days a week that you work, if you do this consistently 5 days a week for a month, see what happens. Just write it in the comments. Reach out to me on Instagram in a month and tell me how many push-ups you started with and how many push-ups you ended up with at the end of the month. And I think you'll be amazed at what you can get done. And you don't even have to call yourself a biohacker. All right. What's another one? So we've all heard of HIIT, high intensity interval training. You don't need to be a biohacker to do that, right? High intensity interval training for someone who is not conditioned could be something like walking for 40 seconds and then jogging for 20 seconds. Like, it doesn't have to be a big deal. But what I wanted, there's a million posts out there about HIIT, about high intensity interval training, where you're working at a very high intensity for a very short period of time and doing that over and over again. One thing you should check out, if you're interested in this, check out Tabatas. Tabatas were very, very popular a number of years ago. I think it's only a 7-minute workout, but you're doing very short intervals with very short breaks. You pick 4 exercises and you could be done with your workout in 7 minutes in a day. And most likely, depending on what exercises you choose, you might have gotten that VO2 max work at the same time. So Tabatas, very cool. I'm not going to explain them because I want to talk about something else, and I'm committed to keeping this to 30 minutes. I want these solo episodes to be short little hits of information for you. Now, here's the thing that not everybody who listens to this podcast may necessarily have on their radar. And I don't think you need to be a biohacker to do this. You probably need to be a biohacker to get to the extreme version of this, but the beginner version of this, you do not need to be a biohacker. So we've heard of HIIT, high intensity interval training, but have we heard about IHT, intermittent hypoxic training? Whoa, that sounds a little scary. Hypoxic. Isn't that when you don't have enough oxygen, Nat? Like, isn't that really bad for your brain when you don't have enough oxygen? Well, here's the thing. We're back to this world of hormetic stressors. That is a term very much used in biohacking. So for those of you who are new to this world, a hormetic stressor kind of feeds into the philosophy of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. These are stresses that are applied to the body, usually by the individual themselves because they want to, that stresses the body out to the point where it creates a physiological response, but just enough to create an adaptation, not enough to overcome the body's capacity. So we don't overwhelm the body with the stressor. We just stress it enough so that it gets a little bit stronger. I mean, if you think about it, progressive overload training is a little bit like that. You do enough weight to really stress the muscle. We create those little micro tears. Then the muscle heals after the workout, and then you end up with a stronger muscle. Same idea. Now, intermittent hypoxic training is really interesting because what you're doing is you're for a very short period of time, and if you're new to this, it's a really short period of time, you're depriving your body of enough oxygen. That sounds super pleasant, right? Really, it's like breath holding. And there's varying ways to do it, and there's varying degrees of doing it. So now, at a beginner level, if you've never done this before, and you're a person that tends to be a little bit short of breath, I want to invite you to sit down to try this out. And I want to tell you, this is not a contest, okay? Try not to do this to the point where you're going to get faint, dizzy, or fall over. We don't want that to happen. So at a very foundational level, and this is something that if those of you who go to yoga may have practiced in yoga, You're going to take 5, you're going to breathe on a count of 5 to 6. You're going to inhale on 6 counts, and you're going to exhale on 6 counts. And you're going to do this for about 5 minutes. Now, after the 5 minutes, what you're going to do is on the exhale, you're going to hold, you're just going to pause for maybe 6 counts, right? Just 6 counts. So inhale for 6, exhale for 6, and you're going to repeat that for 5 minutes. At the end of 5 minutes, at the exhale, you're going to pause for 6 seconds. And you're going to do that for 10 minutes, twice a day. Now check this out. Now, even though you're not a biohacker, I'm going to introduce you to the idea or the concept of stacking that us biohackers like to do. Some people might call it multitasking, but it's not exactly multitasking, because multitasking is when you're trying to do 2 things at once and you end up doing neither very well. Stacking is when you do 2 things at once, but they complement each other. Now, one of the things that we know we want to tap into for all of us, whether we're biohackers or not, is some kind of mindfulness practice. Whether we meditate, whether we do breath work, foreshadowing, whether we do some kind of de-stressing exercise, what we want to be able to do is for, let's say, 10 minutes when we wake up in the morning, 10 minutes before we go to bed at night, we want to have a practice that allows us to come into the present. We might be practicing gratitude at that time, right? We're going to pull something from before. We may practice gratitude while we practice our breath work. If you don't want to do your gratitude at this point, that's totally fine. I can promise you that if you're focusing on this breath, in for 6, out for 6, really slowly, in for 6, out for 6, then you do 5 minutes of holding the exhale for 6 seconds, and you do this for 10 minutes, this will be your mindfulness. You essentially will bring yourself into your body, out of your mind. You're going to be so busy breathing and counting and doing all the things that you're not going to be thinking about what happened today or what's going to happen tomorrow. You're forcibly going to come into the present. You will have accomplished something really powerful. You don't need to be a biohacker to do that, nor do you need to be a biohacker to understand how powerful this practice will be, because it will improve your sleep, it will improve your breath. Intermittent hypoxic training, and I'm not sure that this is enough to do it. I'm going to talk about a more advanced form in a minute that does do it. But from a longevity perspective, it drives up AMP-K, which goes down as we age and we want more of, which when AMP-K goes up, it brings down mTOR, which mTOR tends to go up. And mTOR is an enzyme that we need it to build muscle. But if we have too much mTOR around all the time, it's not that picky about what it builds. And we could end up with more disease states because of mTOR being elevated all the time. And this is why in the biohacking community, we're always kind of looking at ways to drop mTOR. So this is why sometimes we'll restrict protein, or we'll fast, or, we'll do all of these different things that ultimately bring down mTOR and then increase AMP-K. So AMP-K goes up, so does autophagy. Autophagy is great. Now, even though autophagy is a scary biohacking word, even though you're not a biohacker, you may or may not want to know what autophagy is, but I'm going to tell you what it is because it's really cool. It's when your body gets rid of damaged cells and proteins that aren't working properly. So basically, your body is clearing out the clutter. It's major housekeeping, and it puts you in a position where you then have a renewal of cells because your body's going to want to replace what it threw away. And you get rid of those even zombie cells, like senescent cells, that are sitting around producing inflammatory cytokines and dragging you down. They're kind of using up energy without giving any energy back in exchange. Got it? Okay. So for those of you who are curious what a more advanced form of intermittent hypoxic training does, and actually the first guy who really introduced me to this was a few years ago, was Joel Green. He talks about it in his book, The Immunity Code, and he's a huge proponent of it. And now what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in and out very powerfully 5 to 10 times. On the 10th time, you're going to hold your breath, not at 100%, but maybe at 90. So it's kind of like, so you're going to almost hyperventilate. So again, if you're not used to doing this kind of thing, please don't do it by yourself standing in the middle of a room, right? Maybe sit down, do the breath work. If you feel yourself getting lightheaded, please stop. Now, on your somewhere between 5th and 10th breath, you're going to hold your breath. And now what you're going to do is, again, keeping in mind, if you're not accustomed to doing this, you might do push-ups. And you're going to do as many push-ups as you can do before the need to take a breath overcomes. Now, the idea of the push-ups, or you might do squats, let's say, the idea of the exercise is to use up all the oxygen that's trapped in the body. And this is very intentional intermittent hypoxia. And that's going to force the body to adapt and to get stronger. Got it? Got it. Now, another way of doing this kind of hypoxic breath work is, instead of holding the oxygen in, you exhale and you hold. And you see how long it takes before the need to breathe overcomes you. You can actually do this while you're walking down the street, as long as you're not that stubborn person that's going to not breathe until they get dizzy or pass out. So be intentional, be mindful, and be present. Be tapped into your body and know when to take a breath. What's really interesting here, and I was doing this for a while, I'm about to go back to it, is I would do this while I was walking the dog. And I would either count the number of steps it took me before I needed to take that next breath, or I would time myself on my phone or on a watch. I believe it might be Daniel Nestor in his book on breath work, where he talks about this kind of training. You should be able to take about 20 steps. Many of us cannot, but I can tell you that when you start doing this on a regular basis, it's amazing how fast it gets better. So I don't think you need to be a biohacker to do this. You may disagree with me. For those of you who are biohackers and haven't been practicing intermittent hypoxic training, this is your little gem at the end of this podcast, because the beginning was fairly basic, but I think that it's a really powerful tool. It costs nothing. Okay. Nothing that I've talked about today, except for mentioning Katsu, which I wasn't talking about using. Nothing costs you any money. These are the freebies. These are the health optimization freebies in the world. There's a few others, but I'm coming up on time. Oh my God, I'm over a half an hour, but a couple of others that I'm going to mention to you because they're worth mentioning if you're new to this space. In this community, we are obsessed with getting outside and seeing natural light right when we wake up in the morning. Really important information for your eyes. Second, when you're outside during the day at some point, if you wear sunglasses, I stopped wearing sunglasses years ago, but if you do wear sunglasses, take them off. Let your eyes see the light. Why? Because the natural light that you see when you're outside is what informs your brain where you are in time and space and helps your body to start making melatonin when it needs to, so that you're ready for bed at the end of the day. All right. I think that's it for today. So those are my non-biohacking tips, maybe until the last one. I'm going to admit, maybe IHT is sort of a biohacking thing, but I kind of had to sneak that in there because I think it's really cool and it's very accessible and it's very easy to do. So those are all the things that I think that you don't need to be a biohacker to do. And there's definitely lots and lots more. But these are things that if you took even 2 or 3 and that you're not already doing and started to practice them, would make a positive impact on your health and how you're feeling today, and also on your longevity and your health span. So thank you so much for being here with me today. Let me know what you think about this episode. Is there anything else that you want me to talk about in this realm? Was this too basic? Was this too advanced? Tell me what you think. Best way to reach out to me is on Instagram, which is just at Nathalie Nidham. You can find me there. I'm also on YouTube, but I don't get to the comments there as often. Instagram, I'm in there all the time. But if you really want to connect with me personally and maybe attend some of the live Q&As that I do, then you're going to want to join my membership community, which you will find on natnidham.com. At the top, there's a tab that says BSP community. You can click on that. You can join the community. But the one thing you should do above all is you should definitely sign up for my newsletter, because when you do that, number one, you're going to get a 7-email series of all of the things that we need to do to lay the groundwork for more advanced biohacking. Like, for example, using amino acid complexes, also called natural peptides, and what we used to call bioregulator peptides. And at the end of that, you get a chart on all of the different bioregulator peptides, their different names, and what organs they stem from. So really, I think it's a really great gift to you guys when you sign up for the newsletter. And that's about it. If I guess I'm one more call to action. I mean, I know, my producer keeps telling me, Nat, stop giving people a list of things to do. But sometimes you just got to do it, right? So head over to natnidham.com. That's where you're going to find the sign up for the membership community. That's where you can find the sign up for the newsletter. That's also where you can find the Nat Recommends page, where there's all the different products that I recommend with links to the podcast that I recorded on them. And then if you decide to buy anything, there's links and codes right there. And those are all affiliate links. Yes. So just so you know. And finally, the last little thing, if you really enjoyed this episode or any other episode of the podcast, I would love to invite you to leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to the podcast on, because that is how we reach more people. So thank you again so much for joining me. I'll see you guys on next Tuesday. This will drop on Friday. Next Tuesday, we'll have our next regularly scheduled episode with another fabulous guest for you. Thanks so much.